world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren and
and this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen.
Hi, welcome back to the Soulful Leader Podcast. We're really excited to be here today and have a great topic. We've been talking about the great unknown. Like, how do we step out of the familiar? How do we step out of what has been taught to us, educationally wise, business wise, relationship wise, and step out into a place where we don't know that we don't know. And yet we know that we know. It's kind of a paradox, isn't it? It's like kind of what we've been talking about the soulful leader in that way of you're someone who has been doing all the check boxes, doing all the things that you were told to do that would bring you success and happiness. But then all of a sudden realize, I think there's more. No, I don't even think there's no, I know there's more. But how do I get there? And I was using an example of, I have a lot of clients who are young people and extraordinary young people, creative, passionate, and yet have such a high degree of anxiety and stress in their lives. And they're young people. And I'm talking young, I'm talking below 17. And it just breaks my heart because I really understand where they're coming from in the way of they no longer fit into the paradigm that we are offering them, whether it's a school system, a medical model, all the models that we have had. And yet I know in my heart, they are destined for greatness because we all are. That's the truth of all of us. But how do we move forward, Maren? What do you do?
That's a great question because we all came up in an education system that was designed for the industrial age, and it was perfect for the industrial age, and it no longer serves us. And there's a ton of information out there along those lines, and many people who are working on that in changing the education system. I don't feel like that particular piece is not mine to do, and there are some amazing people working on it. Where I feel like I'm really drawn is that question that you just asked of, okay, so now this is where we are currently. What is it for those of us who have either been through it or, like you said, even your young clients, what is the next step? How do we get to that? I think of it as a trusting ourselves. And one of the things that I've seen, and you can, like AI right now is very powerful and it's getting more and more powerful. And online, we're being encouraged to trust it more and more. And one of the things that Stephanie and I talked about this morning is she got a tracking notice from UPS saying that something was delivered, and it was actually fraud with her correct tracking number. And
yeah, they're very artful now. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, and that's the
So
thing
skillful.
Is very skillful. So if we're being trained to trust AI, and AI has the ability to trick us like that, like, where do we turn? And I guess this is the same question that you just asked me. And it is truly getting to trust ourselves, which is something that we're not taught in school. We're taught to trust what's outside of ourselves. We're not taught in society. We're not taught. So there's this inner knowing that we all have. And I think that my experience of the more somebody is successful, the more they've actually started to hone that, their own intuition. And there actually is a difference between intuition and knowing. Intuition being that the more I train myself with something, my subconscious will go and find that information for me without my conscious mind even realizing it, and I know something. And there's a deeper level of knowing that's transrational, that is beyond that. And really, you have to drop out of your brain completely and into your heart.
Back up the bus for a second. I love
Okay.
that. Transrational. That's a big word.
That is a big word.
And when we think it's like rational, like, how many times have you been told,
Be
just
rational.
be rational, right? You're not being rational right now with how you're thinking or what you're doing. And trans meaning to transcend it, or, to lift it up, to be higher and be above your rational mind. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I know that one just still makes my head shake, because there's still a part of me that wants to be so rational, right? It's like, I'm not being rational myself.
And so there is a whole hierarchy, and maybe we can do a podcast on that in the future of, and I know hierarchies, we don't love that. And there is a process of evolution that we can talk about. And it is important to be rational before you get to transrational. And the reason for that is it's really about transcend and include. So if I use an example of dancing, because that's what I do, that's where I've been trained. So before somebody can learn how to do a particular pattern, that's an advanced pattern, they have to understand the basics of what they're doing. And once they understand those basics, then I can add in technique, and I can add in, X, Y, and Z, right? So it's the same type of thing. Is once you have a certain level of competency in anything, then you move to the next level of competency. And our own evolution, and when we use the word evolution, we think of like a caveman, and we forget that we're still evolving. And what is the next evolution for us? And to me,
such a great question.
It is. And
question.
there are much, much smarter minds than me who have been working on this. And if you're interested in it, you can look at some work on spiral dynamics. It's just phenomenal. And like I said, maybe we can do a future podcast on that, because I know it makes both of us excited, and we could probably geek out on that. But that's where that transrational comes from, is the next step in our evolution. And for me, it really is. So we've talked in the past about how the actual mind has a speed limit, and our hearts actually don't. And I know that's a weird concept. Do you have more information on that might help people?
Just what I have learned or studied is that, the brain, it's not even the mind. The mind has all infinite potential, but we keep choosing the same. It's like you have all of this amazing music collection in your Apple Music or whatever, but you keep choosing the same 20, 30 songs. That's it. But you have this infinite, like, plethora of huge abundance to choose from, but you keep defaulting to the same old because it's familiar. That's what our brain does. So our brain can actually only take 30 bytes of information a second. So up until I think it was like 1990, might be 1990, 92, somewhere around there, we were fine. We could handle 30 bytes of information because it wasn't that much information coming out. Now, though, and of course in the 1990s, that's when the internet became worldwide. And all of a sudden we went from dial-up to fiber op to, like, 5G? I think they're looking at 6G now. Like, it just keeps growing. It keeps evolving, which means the frequency, the vibration, the possibilities are magnifying and intensifying. So if you're trying to process it through your brain, you won't be able to. Your brain will literally short circuit, just like anything. It's like if you put too many plugs in an outlet, you're going to blow a fuse. Like it's going to it's going to burn out. And that's what we're seeing collectively as a humanity, is that we are just completely burnt out. We're burnt out, we're fried, because we haven't dropped into the place of the heart, that 18-inch journey down into the heart and the soul of who we are, which has no speed limit. It can literally digest anything and transcend anything. But it's foreign.
Yeah.
It's not, it's the path, less traveled, so to speak.
And I think that our leaders out there can really relate to that overwhelm and burnout of like, I'm done.
So let's give an example of that, because the burnout and overwhelm is so true right now. And people will say, I just don't have enough time, or I'm tired. I don't have enough energy. You hear these all the time, right? And often it's because we're not doing the thing that's ours to do. So you might have heard Maren say that earlier in our conversation, that what was hers to do is hers to do, and what's not to do is education. It's somebody else's to do. It's like, do you know what is yours to do? And here's a quick insight of that. It's usually very much what tugs your heart, what kind of creates an emotion. And that emotion could be sadness, like it just breaks your heart. It could be anger, like how dare this, like da da da, getting rage, or that. These are doorways. Like as a culture, as a society, we're not very in tune to look and check in our emotions. We tend to want to numb them out. We want to medicate them. And we want to suppress them instead of looking at, like in Chinese medicine, your emotion. When you suppress emotion, that's stuck energy, emotion, energy in motion. We talk about flow. That's where energy, you have flow where energy goes. Like energy is moving, you got flow. So a doorway could be your sadness. A doorway could be the anger or the fear. These are all doorways.
I want to talk about that for a second, because I think that a lot of our entrepreneurs and our leaders, what we do is we create a life where we're actually almost addicted to the adrenaline of next, do more. So there is that, like, oh, I can do it. And we love a challenge that is a little bit beyond us. And so we tend to be the goers and the doers and make that happen. And there's still this part of us that's like, there's something else. And the hardest thing, oftentimes the most uncomfortable thing, is to stop, is to actually go inside and find those keys and those cues that you were just talking about, of the sadness, of the heartbreak, or even of the complete unknown. And that is like the stopping and going within is so much harder. So we just find the next thing out there. And we're good with being uncomfortable, as long as uncomfortable means being out there instead of in here
and actually feeling it. And I have a little saying that I say, it's like, to feel it is to heal it. Because if you don't feel it and you don't heal it, it becomes issues in your tissues.
It very much does.
So I think
that's a wake-up call for a lot of very high successful, high energy people, is like they're physically stopped by something that's become a physical issue, and now they can't go and do and be out there. And they have to go
and we
inside.
so value we've been told to value our worth by what we do. And are we doing enough? And are we going enough? And it's like, there is a shift that is being asked of us, to be still and to listen and to feel what we're feeling, to let that be the doorway, and know that if we rest in it, it actually will move us. It's like the river. If you actually feel the feelings with a loving presence, that's not about just, discharging it and yelling at someone else. So I know Maren was just talking about my experience with UPS this morning, because I had gone to work and my husband's home, and sometimes he gets on the phone, he gets busy, and he doesn't always hear the doorbell. And I get this email and I'm like, I can't believe it. He didn't answer the UPS. Drives me crazy. Now I got to go and get the UPS thing. And so I called him. I said, were you not there? Did you not hear the doorbell? And he's like, Steph, I've been here the whole time. And so I'm like, okay, well then it's UPS's fault. Like I went to this shame blame thing. I got hooked. I got hijacked. And then finding out that it's a fraud. But my point is that to slow down. And I have to remember this too, to just take a moment, slow down, drop into my heart and go, okay, is this true? What is the most beautiful and kind way to address this? instead of reacting. And I got hooked this morning. I went into reaction. So slow down, breathe. If I had taken just a couple of minutes and reread that email, I probably would have noticed some things were a little off, and I could have addressed it very differently. And I look at the metaphor of that. It's like, how and where else do I need to do that in my life, with myself, with my clients, and to totally trust that that flow is going to move me and lift me up.
Yeah, I think that for all of our audience, that might be a question that they're having as we discuss this, of like, okay, yeah, I experienced that too, of I get caught up in my busy doing. I was trained to do that really well. I'm super great at making things happen, at pushing through. And what does it mean to not do that? Because I know for myself, one of the things that I've developed is this dance with life, and that's how I do it. That's what means something to me, because I train myself in dancing as well, and in dancing I'm in flow, and I learned what that means, and now I've started to translate that into actual life, of what does that mean, how to do that in my life. And even with all of my training, there are still times where I go into that shame and blame too, if I'm not doing enough. I'm not just sitting here and meditating or doing whatever, or just being. Like, I'm supposed to be doing something. And you have a saying that you like, and I love it too, is like, we're human beings, not human doings. And it's not that we're not meant to do anything. It's that we're meant to become something. Be and become. And so dropping out of that mind chatter and dropping into a deeper place. And we're talking about the 18-inch journey into the heart. And I know I've also heard people talk about it as dropping into your ground of being. It is a place where you learn it in meditation. You learn it in developing a deeper sense of knowing. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. I think this is such a great pause to be able to really reflect on, where could you be more being? Where could you bring more beingness? If you want to do something, because you're so addicted to doing, where do you need to be more?
And it's interesting. I was just listening to somebody else who was talking about the same thing, and they were saying that in that moment where you can do that, that's when things actually happen the fastest and the most magically. It's like where something can just transform in a moment. We work. It's like, go do, blah, blah, blah. We try and make this happen, and then we drop in, and boom, it's done. And we don't see that side of things. We just think, well, I'm not getting there. It's like you have to really get that practice down and experience that. And it's amazing the transformation that can happen out there when you take a moment in here.
And with more energy, more life force, more joy,
more grace,
more grace, more humor. Like who doesn't want more of those things? More love? It's all good, right? And that's what we offer to the world when we give it to ourselves. I think we forget that. We think we're separate from everything. So we have to prove ourselves to go, maybe. But what if just literally practicing being, or just being and resting, true rest, that actually is your remedy, that it actually is what you are now offering to those that you love around you, is that state of peace, that state of beingness. Permission.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, am really excited about exploring more of this with you all, our audience, and with you, Stephanie. And please let us know the places in your life where either you're feeling very stuck, or you've found that place where you're like, oh, I can relax into that. And I'm starting to know the knowing, that deeper place that we're all aspiring to be. So on that note, we'll ask that, hey, if there's somebody that you think would value our information and would love to be on this journey with us, share our podcast. And please do post on our Facebook page. We would love to hear from you. I know you guys are out there lurking and stalking us. And I see a lot of you joining us, and I appreciate that. And we really do want to hear from you. So if you have something to say, please share it with us. We'd love to hear it.
So until next time, just be.
Have a beautiful week.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.